Based on your experience, how does company realize that it's time to modernize their digital product design?
But imagine that you have two ways of working. One way is funnel based, and the other way is holistically. It's different in many ways. It's different in kind of like decision-making processes. It's different in accountability. Often it's different in considerations that you need to have. So like the risk of making a change that breaks everything.
Hello guys, today we see in our studio me, and I'm Andrei Samber, the CEO of LinkUp Studio, and today in our studio we have Natalia, 10 years experience UI UX designer and head of the design in LinkUp Studio, and a great guide with us. Please meet Avi Ashkenazi. So the great opportunity. Avi is a product designer who has created digital products for Samsung, led the design team for FinTech platform Iwoca, and is currently working as the UX designer at the #1 e-commerce platform for the business, Shopify. And as you may already understood, dozen of experience in this virtual room, and today we will try to get the most exciting moment of professional life of Avi out of his mind, out of his brain, and we'll hope everyone will enjoy. So hello Avi, nice to see you here.
Yeah, hello.
Hey, nice to see you.
Yeah. Okay, good. So let me get straight to the point. So tell us in general about your career. So you are here and you have a great story. When we prepared, we searched your LinkedIn, searched the project you worked before, like how that began and how you accomplished to be in the place where you are.
So first of all, thank you so much for having me on the podcast and videocast. I started my career probably as a musician. I did a lot of music and I started doing like designs to support the music that I was working on, either to produce covers or music videos, etc. This is kind of how it all started. When I finished my BA degree, I decided that it's not enough and I want to go and do a master's. At that point of time, I looked at a variety of schools in Europe. And I remember going to my head of department and I told him, I got accepted to TU Delft and I got accepted to CIID and ZHDK and Goldsmiths. And he was like, okay, one of them is in London, the other ones are across Europe. Do you know anyone famous from Zurich? And I was like, no. Do you know anyone famous from Delft? I was like, no. Do you know anyone famous from London? I was like, yeah. It's like, boom. There you go. So fast forward 11 years, I've been here in London. Whilst I was inside kind of the master's degree, we had an event, Pachakucha, where we were pitching our skills. And one of the teachers saw that and was like, I know a company that could really use your skills. And at that point, I partnered with a company called Stromatolite, which was an agency that did like really interesting European Union supported festivals and music and technology projects and installations. I've been working there for a bit. From there, I moved and worked for Deutsche Telekom on a variety of media products, their biggest news website, different kind of German copycats of American startups like Dropbox and Calendar and Gmail, but the German secure version of that. From there, I moved to Samsung, where I worked in a hybrid role between industrial design and interaction design, and I led a small team that built televisions and audio systems and IoT devices. And then I started my own startup in the hospitality industry, helping restaurants seat people efficiently inside restaurants. We were able to sell a small piece of that company at the end of 2018. Where I moved to Iwoca, which was at the scale-up stage, was 150 people, grew to 350 people within the course of a year. Set up the whole design/product function over there together with the CPO and hired huge amount of people and restructured to make it as efficient as possible. Created the disciplines of product designs and research and marketing design inside Iwoca. And at the end, I was kind of functioning also as a hybrid role between design and product. And then Shopify. I'm quite new to Shopify, 4.5 months in, but really, really loving it, really enjoying it. Wonderful people, huge amount of designers there, so lots of people to learn from. Even though the role is design, you can deal with product as well. So you work usually in trifectas, and that means that you work with someone from tech, someone from product. Sometimes there's like someone from data involved as well. But the relationship is fluid, and depending on the skills and interest of specific people, we all lift the product together and build together.
Mm-hmm. Well, I just will tell to our listeners that we definitely will call about the experience on the Shopify, but let's go start with it, because people everyone know what it is and all of that. So, but that would not be interesting in case we're going to eat dessert like right from the beginning. So yeah, Natalia, go ahead.
Yeah. Today we have the narrative that the main role of design is to broadcast and spread the value of a brand has gained wide popularity. You had the opportunity to work with companies of different scales and different products. What do you personally define as the most important task of design for business?
Specifically focusing on brand?
Yeah, show value of brand across design.
Through the design, yeah.
Okay. So I think you can tackle it in variety of ways, but I think that the main criteria for a brand to be successful is trust. Customers need to know, or like your users, customers, they need to know and understand that you are, who you say you are, and you have specific values, and you convey trust. So they will be able to kind of interact with you and put down their defenses and either convert on your website, understand what you're standing for, have the kind of the ability to read and digest the content that you're giving to them. Without the trust, people initially skim very quickly. Everyone's looking for a first impression, and the first impression that they see makes a big difference. That is the thing that will eventually create trust. I love giving the metaphor of going into a room. And usually where the light switch, you do like this with your hand to the place on the left side of the wall where usually the light switch is, or on the right side of the wall where the light switch usually is. And if you don't find the light switch there, well, boom, this is a surprise. And suddenly you're like, okay, I don't know where I'm at. I've entered a different room. I'm in a different universe. What am I doing here? These are things that you want as a brand to avoid. You want to make sure that if you're talking about yourself in a specific way, you talk consistently about yourself in that way. You want to make sure that you have specific buttons. Everything looks and feels like it's a part of the same world. In the world, if I kind of correlate it to a house, there is a shower, and the shower behaves slightly different in the kitchen and slightly different to the bedroom. But some of the things, the positioning in terms of height of the light switches will always remain the same.
I think like from everything that I just understood, I believe that would be right to resume that good branding is equal consistent, right? I mean, you use that word. I mean, it must be consistent.
It must be consistent because this is how you're telling your story. And if you're telling multiple stories, then people will start thinking, oh, is this lie? Is this truth? Is this like, well, kind of intention and invested? Because your brand, you can't have your brand look like patches of stuff. Again, with the metaphor of the house, like you go into a house and if every room looks different and like some rooms have carpet, some rooms have like wooden flooring, some rooms have concrete flooring, and you don't understand really why you have specific floors in a specific place, you're left in an awe, essentially. And that awe is a pause, and the pause is slipping and not converting and not really believing to the person who you talk to.
Yeah, totally agree with you.
Okay, so the next question for you would be: you mentioned that you work in Iwoca with the scaling, like through the scaling period of the company, and so question, like when it's time for you, or as the business owner, and I'm asking about the obviously product designer perspective, but how do you think when it's time to understand that you need to start scaling? This is not going to work in this condition anymore. We need to expand. like what is the right moment for this, and how to understand that you are in that moment? Because everyone, I believe that's obvious, that in case you do it too early, you will fail because you don't have enough mass, resources and so on. If you make it too late, you're missing the point. So, but how to find that point, in your opinion?
It depends on what would you call scale. You can scale in multiple ways, right? You can scale.
Yeah, let's start from the definition. What is scaling? Yeah, that's the right direction.
You can say, I want to hire more people. You can say, I want to create more products. You can say, I want to double down and increase like the audience who is using my product because I feel that I've proven an MVP. So I just want to kind of market it and get more people to onboard. And these are like different ways of scaling. The way a business is built really makes a difference and really makes an impact on the DNA. Usually when if I interview with a company, I would kind of go and try to understand where the CEO kind of studied, what's their degree, what's their profession. Are there like first-time CEOs? Have they had like any other work experience in other companies? All these parameters impact, how good they can manage. What would be kind of when things get stressful, what would be their default tool that they would address? People tend to kind of go to their past and tend to go to their safe place. And if someone, for example, is from finance, when shit gets hard, they will go and they will kind of open the spreadsheet and start doing that. If someone is, from a product perspective or from a marketing perspective, when things will get tough, you'll know which people are going to get cut from the company. You'll know which lens the CEO/founders will look through. Mm-hmm. So it's always, obviously from that perspective, it's always quite useful and powerful when you have like 2 founders or 3 who are from different disciplines and they can balance each other as well. And then there's the other factor of how were they when they got successful. So I can tell you, for example, at Iwoca, when there was a pandemic and we had to shrink down a little bit, and then later on we grew again. At that point of time, again, like the founders kind of took their lens and they were like, okay, how did we make this business work from the get-go? Let's kind of scale down what we think is not essential and do what we did before that worked for us. Now, it doesn't always work. Sometimes it doesn't work, but usually if the founders are extremely well equipped and great at what they used to do, you can be successful in a business in multiple ways. You can be successful by like being super finance savvy. You can be by super design savvy, and you can be by being like super tech led from that perspective. Going back to your question about like when do I know that I need to scale? After you kind of analyzed and you saw some adoption, right? You saw that people enjoy your product, that you have something that is working. You can double down and start like growing. And you can choose how to grow. You can choose to kind of hire lots of salespeople and kind of go enterprise route and knock on doors. And in that world, like you'll have design supporting sales from that perspective. For example, if you're like an API-based company, let's say like Bud, or if you were like a more kind of retail or like fashion heavy or music heavy, then you would probably double down on marketing and product and designers and kind of try to create more value in subscription model, some sort of SaaS of a way. Mm-hmm. Or you can go and just like go full on heavy marketing, content, etc. And in that world, you're investing in content creation and you build like the army that you need in order to generate that stuff.
So it's not SEO perspective. So it's not like more about the point. It's about, like how you wanted to do it, and then like just make. It's more important to make the decision how you're going to do it than when, as far as I understood from your answer.
Because it depends what you want to achieve, right? It's not really the how is kind of anchored around what you want to achieve. Do you want to bring more users? Do you want to attract different users? Do you want to build a new product?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Okay, makes sense.
When I was at Iwoca, for example, they really wanted to kind of expand their suite of products. They wanted to serve small, medium businesses in the best possible way. And that's why there was like a heavy investment in product and design, because these are the people who can go and talk to users and understand what their needs are and how can they either tweak the product that exists or create new products.
Just for our listeners, Iwoca is the for those who don't know maybe, but this is the FinTech product, right? So
correct. Iwoca is a B2B lender, Series D company. I think the last round was 2019, so probably we'll go and raise sometime soon.
Okay.
Following the previous one, significant percentages of problem in software development arise because the product owner or client or some decision maker did not take into account in the process of the product for the future. Could you name a few points to consider as the beginning of product design if you plan to scale your product in the future?
By the way, it's a really interesting question in the context that before you told that actually founders, from their lenses, supposed to decide, where the product is going, and now I'm asking you about like, okay, but what we're doing in case you, as the professional in a product design, you need to convince them to something, how to do it, like how you deal with them, how you're supposed to deal with bosses.
Yeah, well. Generally, when I kind of mention like what founders kind of default to when things are hard, usually you don't like hire like crazy when things are hard. And usually you hire crazy when you want to scale, when you're placing essentially a bet. And you have the answer in kind of the body of the question. I believe that it's important when you're building a product to think about scalability. And scalability is constructed out of this thing works, and we want to make sure that it works. So preventing churn, making sure people spend more time on the product, / that the product will be more useful for them. It's about optimization of all the paths in it and trying to kind of understand what is missing. It's about trying to... One second, I lost myself.
Sure. Sorry.
What was I thinking? Yeah. Okay. So it's about like making sure that people come together and understand that there is like a specific mission and we're all going into a specific way. Like it's very easy, for example, as a manager to think about the people that work for you individually and try to cater their kind of training plans and kind of growth just for themselves. But at the end, they all need to support the product and you need everyone running in the same direction, right? It could be that one person is going to run like this and one person is going to run straight and one person is going to jump all the way, but it needs to be towards like the same directions. And so when you kind of define training, it needs to kind of support that as well. And then finally, you need to make sure that when the company grows beyond like a certain size, people start asking, but I don't understand what the strategy is. What is the strategy? Where are we going?
I know what you're talking about because our company right now also in the scaling period, and I completely agree with you, and I may approve that this word is totally truth. That's truth. Yeah. Okay. So, you very slightly led us to my next question. It's actually about the leadership, because what you're talking about is about the right leadership, right? As you told, everyone can make their work differently, but at least everyone needs to go in one direction. And I know that you got experience in the leading the team, as you mentioned, hiring people. And I also know that, managing design is different from managing designers. And I may assume that you manage not only the designers. So what kind of the suggestion would be, for those who wanted to be a leader, or maybe they are right now, or maybe some, life hacks about how to work with people, but as a leader?
First of all, I believe in role modeling. You can't say stuff unless you know stuff. Generally, designers are art practitioners. They have a specific skills. They hone on that skill and they improve it on a daily basis. And for them to value you, you need to be good at it as well. Now, there is a point of time where you stop designing physically. You might design some stuff like at home for fun, or whatever you do, but at the same time, you're probably not going to be like the best kind of Figma shortcut, like Framer, prototyping to the cloud. And that's okay. But if you know about all those new things and you know how they can use that in order to kind of improve themselves, and if you listen to them, because like when you work with people, like half the time they just want you to listen and value them and help them grow and give them feedback. If you listen to them, you will learn all that stuff. If you really care, you will hear what they're saying and you will learn about these improvements and you will cross-correlate and you will do mixology between people. Some people work better with other people. Some projects require a person that is more like that and another person who is more like that. And this is your role. This is kind of where managing designers kind of change into managing design. There is a process that you believe that should be followed. Usually, the process is not linear and the process is messy, and it's also doesn't always include the same components. But throughout the years, as a person who worked in that field, you know that there's a bunch of tools. Whereas a designer who just graduated has this like hammer and they just like want to hit with that hammer, and whatever task that you're going to give to them, the first thing they will pick up, very much like what I said about the founders, the first thing that they will pick up when things get hard or when they're like insecure or not sure what to do or when it's vague, is that hammer. And you are there to help them and kind of show them, hey, I have a bunch of other ways, a bunch of other tools that you can try. And you're there to just help them kind of expand their repertoire and set of tools and also help them weight those things. So again, if we have like a specific process and project is, let's say, 2 months, you create a process for that project, which might entail, competitor research, user research, like UX trends, wireframes, mockups, testing, et cetera. But if you have a shorter period of time, well, you might skip some of those things. And if you have a longer time, you might put more, or if the project is more kind of front-end heavy or back-end heavy, you might emphasize specific aspects of that process. And you will help the designer pick up the tool that they need in order to actually do the work in the best possible way, based on your experience, which includes management experience, not just like IC experience, also management experience.
So it's basically like about flexibility, not... lots of people I know, they take in a book and they do directly to the book, but you need to use your brain and understand where you can, do something more heavily and not, yeah.
And change process.
Yeah, and change process in case you see that will bring the value. Okay, clear on that.
It's about learning and knowing everything that you can and keeping the curiosity going and learning all these new things and trying new things. But also knowing when is it safe to try, when do you need to de-risk.
Yeah, because sometimes you may try, but it will be disaster for a business, So yeah, I agree.
I would like to jump to another topic that's important part of the product design process, and I want to talk about product modernization. Based on your experience, how does company realize that it's time to modernize their digital product design?
Get stuck. Usually, you have two ways of working. I'm abstracting it. I'm making it like quite generic. But imagine that you have two ways of working. One way is funnel based, and the other way is holistically. When you work funnel based, you have different design teams across the funnel. Let's say the homepage, website, then what happens in the kind of engagement flow, and then inside the actual product retention. And then maybe some other team kind of functioning in support. And if you have multiple products, then this kind of cascades and goes kind of duplicates. The good stuff about that is that you can really squeeze down every conversion. You can really incrementally improve every step of the funnel. You can make everything perfect. But then suddenly you kind of take the macro view and you look at it, and you see that one team completely changed the design system and did some things in order to for their part of the journey to work perfectly well. And they did manage to bring, 20% more conversion, but what they essentially did was create a break in the design system. So this part looks like this, the other part looks a different way, and the third part looks a third way. inconsistency erodes trust, what we talked about in kind of a brand perspective. The other way to work, and like, that's the good stuff. The good stuff is that you can squeeze every juice of the funnel. The bad stuff is you create inconsistency, you create breaking points. After you work a little bit in that way, you can go and say, okay, let's think about this thing holistically. I've identified this problem across this funnel. I want to solve it in all different touch bases. And then you have teams that are problem-based, not process-based. And then they would say, I'm going to pick up a certain problem of the user and I'm going to tackle it in an email that we're sending, in the way support is talking to them, in the way kind of the homepage explained that thing, in the way that the product actually kind of showcased that. And in that world, you create consistency of copy, consistency of design. Everything starts like getting unified, but you're losing the tightness of the screws of conversion. And you need to do both, right? It's just sometimes from a design perspective, you need to focus more on that one. And sometimes you need to focus more on the other one. Sometimes you need to focus on speed and sometimes you need to focus on quality. And it's okay to say for the next 6 months, we're going to focus on quality. Because otherwise, if you say, I want quality and I want speed, they can't happen at the same time.
We need to have a balance between.
Yeah, there are three things: money, speed, and quality, and like you can choose only two, maximum two of them. Yeah.
Also, based on your experience, is a modernization in a big corporation with a few millions of users, is it different when we have a small technology companies?
Of course, it's different. It's different in many ways. It's different in kind of like decision-making processes. It's different in accountability. Often it's different in considerations that you need to have. So like the risk of making a change that breaks everything. It's because of that, it sometimes is different in pace. I think that Shopify is like amazing in even though like we're huge, we have like incredible pace inside and we're able to ship things very, very quickly. But I've seen organizations that can't do that in that size.
So in the context of modernization, like before, because we prepared, guys, right? I know that right now something that you're responsible for is the scalability in the sense of localization to the different market in the Shopify. So, and interesting thing, because right now there are economical crisis, in case you wanted to say, like at least everyone's scared about that in the world, right? So not from perspective of any economical things, but more about perspective of modernization, and in the sense that you're doing this for the different. What kind of challenges you're facing right now with that? I mean, with the scalability of the big product like Shopify, it's not even the product; it's the company, because it consists from different products, right? But like, what challenges from the designer perspective, because it's it's clear that that's not about drawing few designs in Figma. It's about the philosophy, it's about the approach. So what are you doing there? How you get this problem solved?
I think one of the things that I can tell you, like one of the best things about Shopify is that as a designer, you don't need to fight for your life or explain your value. I've been in many places where you always had to kind of explain what's the value of design, why is it important, what do you do. I think in Shopify, you have so many designers and it's such a culture of design inside the organization that you don't have that issue. And going back to kind of what I said before about founders, if the founders don't come from like a background that kind of appreciates, or, for example, the company was founded and they decided that they need design after just 5 years, you can see that as a culture, like we were able to make a company for 5 years, there was no design. And now we feel like we need design. We don't exactly know why we need design, but it is required. You have a lot of companies like that. And some of them, get good design leaders and suddenly get to a point where they value it, and some of them get less good design leaders and they just continue the thinking that it's not working or like it has like limited amount of value. In terms of kind of like how Shopify works with kind of how the global economic situation is happening, we're keeping on building. There was a minor scale down, as you kind of saw in media, but we are still here to help the merchants build their stores, expand globally, and sell what they can online in the most simple, straightforward way that we can. And that includes kind of what my team is working on in localization, which my team is kind of more on scale merchants that sell in a certain place and want to go and expand into another location. And as you can imagine, it's quite hard to do that. You need to figure out taxes, shipping, translating your content, all these ad support, all these aspects of like taking your product into a completely different country that often you can't even speak the language of.
By the way, in case it's not a secret, what was the last country that you have worked with? Or maybe it's not finished and you can tell us. Maybe something last that you can tell. Let's take it like this.
The last what?
That you can speak about that you used to work on the localization for that country.
So I can tell you that recently we've launched an improvement that allows to merchants talk to their customers in the language. So before, merchants, if they wanted to email someone in a specific country in a different language, they wouldn't be able to do that. And that's something that my team kind of launched recently. The ability for merchant to or for customers to choose that they want to be spoken in a specific language, and to automatically allow the merchant to have all their communications in that specific language to the customers. So if you're in Japan and you speak English, but you're kind of like living with Google Translate, you will be able to just get all the communication from the merchant in English if you tell them so.
Okay, makes sense. And that's really interesting. So it's like obvious function in a sense, but I understand that in case you have the product that large, it's not obvious. It's actually not obvious and not easy to do. Yeah.
Because you can imagine that there's like many notifications that could come. It's like checkout and other notifications and marketing notifications. So kind of anchoring all those type of things and make it all work together is
because you're making the slight change, but those changes are leading to dozens of small different changes, and you can't miss anything because otherwise the whole system may break. Yeah, I completely understand what you're talking about.
Let's continue to talk about Shopify. And Shopify offers a good UX design framework that standardize and will work for more customers perfectly. On the one hand, we talk about design that transfers the value of the brand, and on the other hand, we ready make systems that can be simply copied and adjust for 1,000 business and around of the world. My question is, what are the unique elements of the product design system that cannot be included in standard framework?
I think that generally, like some of the rules that you want to have in a design system is if 80% of the merchants in Shopify's design system, Polaris, is quite famous. It's well known, and developers are using it, merchants are using it, Shopify is using it, and it's kind of out there as a beacon for many design systems. Very similar to, I would say, probably material design and iOS guidelines and IBM's ones. I think what we're trying to do is follow the rule of if 80% are using it 80% of the time, then this thing will make its way into the design system. And if it's like edge cases and specific things, because when you work on a specific product, you know what's best for your product.
Yeah.
Me, as someone who kind of creates a product inside Shopify, I need to make sure that I look at all the potential design systems, all the potential components. Can I use them to really do what my product does in the best possible way? There are edge cases. There are scenarios where you start something that later on gets evolved or baked into an existing product, or something that you need to be bespoke. But the general rule is 80% of the time, and maybe even pushing towards like 90% of the time is to use that because it gives you the scalability, the speed that Shopify is well known for, and you can just like get things done way, way quicker. And in a kind of very, very high level of quality because those components are tested and bulletproof against any potential scenario. And when you create something new, you're basically exposing yourself to potential edge cases or like testing that you didn't essentially sign up for. Like what you wanted was to get the best product possible. Mm-hmm. And you might end up in a scenario where you need to kind of go and like check all those components and spend too much time on that. So if you're really doing something bespoke, it really needs to be worth it.
Okay, cool.
So, pre-last question. So we know that you are working with the methodology Shape Up. You used to work, but the question, those who don't know, the Shape Up is the methodology that was invented by Basecamp originally, as far as I know, right? And Avi, you can tell a few words about the methodology itself, but my question is more about like Shopify is the huge organization. It's very curious how much team members you have inside your team, and how is it possible to use that methodology? What advantages it gives to you, and so on and so on.
Okay, so like a quick intro on the methodology, and like just to say, like in Shopify we're using like variety of methodology, and it's a special kind of secret sauce that the company is kind of keeping. But yes, we do have some things that are very similar to Shape Up, with adaptation obviously for Shopify. And I think like the main thing that is like quite useful inside Shape Up is that you have these 6-week cycles, which is very different to like regular Agile, where you go and like you do 2 weeks. Mm-hmm. When you do 2 weeks, it gives you flexibility. You have a mixture of like big rocks, small rocks, and you kind of dish out features. But the problem with that is with all the agility comes a lot of flexibility. And flexibility means that your product manager or like your team can just change its mind quite often. Mm. And that also means that sometimes people just like go ahead and start projects without like really researching or planning it properly. When you commit to like a 6-week timeline, you're essentially telling your team, we're going to spend like a huge amount of time, and it's either like success or failure. We either hit the success criteria and measurements that we wanted, or we're not. Shipping will happen anyway. Like this is like, it's a given. You will kind of plan and kind of crunch it to get to like the solution. And with that lens of 6 weeks, you know that if you commit to do something, you have to plan it properly, because otherwise it's going to be like a massive fail. And you will fail the product, you'll fail the company, you'll fail yourself, and there's going to be a lot of people working on something that is not valued. Which basically means that both the tech, the design, and the product will need to kind of cook a really, really good proposal to make sure that it's worth and is selected. Because part of the Shape Up methodology is that you're doing a bet. You pitch like X amount of projects every cycle. Some projects get selected, some won't, depending on either like ambition, how much the team really wants it to happen, and stakeholder input. And you just like then kind of go and get it done. And if someone says that something is urgent, well, this could be, if it's like urgent but will take a long time, well, it's worth planning, because if it's that important, let's plan so we don't fail. And if it's super urgent and very short, then you have kind of a fire extinguishing 18 commando SWAT type of team that will kind of go and do that, which usually you generally have in kind of a tech team anyway. You always have like 1 or 2 people who turn off fires or like, solve specific bugs, etc. So I guess like, in a nutshell, what I'm saying is it lets you be very intentional with what you do and help you kind of plan it properly and deliver usually great results.
Could you compare the experience of organization, the design process in small team and in the huge team? Is there some difference between this?
Yes, there's some huge differences because you need to be an amazing, in a small team, it's quite easy. People know what the other person is doing. Even, in 15, 20 people, relatively people know what each other are doing. They know how good each other are. They know what to rely on each other for. And in a huge team, which requires a lot of coordination, your ability, and, especially Shopify, it's like fully remote company. Your ability to communicate in writing, in like asynchronous videos is critical. And your ability to build consensus and kind of build within and with a system, as I said, Polaris, is quite critical for how quick you'll be able to bring your product into the market. You can go other ways. You can go and like do a variety of bespoke things, but that just means that your process is going to get slower, because you're essentially going against kind of the stream, the DNA, what I would call like the DNA of the company.
Can I ask how many people you have in Shopify team, design team?
More than 700 designers.
Wow, that's cool.
Cool. So, and you lead in all of them, or it's just in general, like shop, all of them?
I'm not leading all of them. I'm leading a small team in the localization team. So I have a team of 5 currently, and we're growing rapidly.
Okay, good. My last question. So you got, lots of experience, and something that I would like to emphasize, that it's like you told that your life story started, as the musician, and then you become the product designer, and it's like, but it's still about the creativity, to be honest. Like for me, like nothing changed, you just changed a hammer, but you didn't change the willing of doing things in your life, as I see it. Have you still alive? How you didn't get crazy? What is the most because every people is driven by something, and that's why they doing that, even in case it's tough, even in case it's hard, and so on and so on. So what is the main driver for you? Like what is the most exciting thing in the design is for you?
The most exciting thing for me is learning new things. I am addicted to it, quite frankly. And that kind of is the thing that feeds me: new books, podcasts, blog posts, anything that I can get my hand on with creativity, right? So if you combine, like, it fuels my creativity. I have an urge to create. I still kind of produce music. It's something that it's just a part of me. I can't like turn it off, and I had it since I was a kid. I was probably late, like around like age of 12. It all started with writing, then became music, then it became design, then it became product. It's all about like going and trying to build stuff. I think that at the start, I just wanted to do stuff that I wanted to do. So it was more artsy, it was more experimental, and less with purpose. And as kind of time grew, the purpose aspect of it keeps me busy way more. How it will be received, how can I make the most amount of impact, how can I communicate and reach people in the best possible way. That is the thing that, together with like learning, is the thing that I'm obsessed with. And, it could be that, for my personal take, the audience that I would prefer to get to is like a specific audience. So I kind of would craft my content in the level that would fit the audience that I believe in. So, for example, when I write, I will write like 12-minute read type of blog post, as an example. I will not do like something that is like super short or digest, and I will not kind of write 280 characters tweets.
Something that you need to dive in.
Yeah, I'm more like a wordy, deep dive type of person.
Okay, cool. Well, thank you for your attention for us today. Thank you for all of your answers, and I hope it's super valuable. I mean, I not hope, I know that it's super valuable for our listeners. Again, guys, today in our studio we had Avi Ashkenazi, right now the product designer in the Shopify, and well, till the next time, bye.